On the day I was hoping for congratulations, I received an eviction notice. This is a story of a woman abandoned by her parents on her birthday. But instead of falling apart, she stood up, chose her truth, and built a life of peace and freedom. For anyone who's ever been hurt by family, this story is for you. Share your experience in the comments. Subscribe for more healing, heartfelt stories. On my third morning at Lena's, I woke up at 6 a.m., even though there was no reason to. I brewed coffee, wiped down the table, even watered her balcony plants. Small habits to cling to, just to feel like I still had control over something. In the little kitchen, I opened my laptop again. This time, not to check bills, but to cut the last strings that still tied me to the old house, the one I used to call home. I logged into the joint bank account I shared with my mother, the one she always called for emergencies. I used to believe her. Believed that family meant trust and sharing, but now I knew trust doesn't exist without respect, and this wasn't trust, it was exploitation. I transferred all remaining funds into a brand new account under my name, changed the passwords, enabled every security alert, removed her access completely. I didn't stop there. I canceled the Amazon Prime account my father used to order endlessly on my card. I deleted the old house address from my payment info, logged out of every device. Each step didn't bring rage, just clarity, like dusting off a shelf, not because you're angry, but because you need space to breathe. That afternoon, my mother messaged me. "Did the bank card stop working? Your dad's furious." I didn't reply. I simply closed the laptop and leaned back. The ceiling in Lena's apartment had a small crack shaped like a V. I stared at it like it might explain everything I was feeling. That evening, Lena came home carrying 2 sandwiches. We ate in silence, soft music playing from her radio. After we finished, she asked, "Are you going to tell them about disconnecting everything?" I shook my head. "They'll figure it out. When the internet dies, when the lights go out, when the car isn't insured anymore, they'll know. And if they call, I won't answer." I thought that would make me feel guilty, but it didn't. I just felt calm. That night, I typed in the document named Freedom. I lived my whole life trying to please them. Now I live just to breathe. I printed that sentence, cut it out, and taped it to the bathroom mirror. A reminder, a declaration, and the beginning of something new. We've just witnessed the journey of a woman abandoned by her own family on her birthday. But instead of breaking down, she chose to rise, to speak her truth, and to live a life of wholeness even on her own. This story reminds us, blood doesn't always mean love. But when we find the courage to let go of what no longer serves us, we also open the door to a new life, lighter, calmer, and truly worth living. My name is Maggie. I live in Glenfield, a small town full of red maples where autumn gets photographed more than the people do. At 35, I thought I understood the meaning of family. Support, affection, a place to return to. But all those definitions shattered on the morning of my birthday. I work at the town library. Not a high-paying job, but a stable one. I cook, do laundry, pay the bills, and occasionally fix the water heater or a flickering light. I live with my parents, Roger and Elaine, since my divorce. I thought they needed me, or maybe I needed them. Either way, I stayed. That morning, I went to work as usual. I brought a small cupcake in a paper box, a gift to myself. No one at work remembered the day. I didn't mention it either. When I got home, there was a suitcase sitting outside the door. My old suitcase. Beside it was a handwritten note in my mother's writing. "Maggie, it's time for you to live your own life. We can't let you keep depending on us." I froze. The suitcase wasn't a mistake. The note wasn't wrong. It was clearly her handwriting. No "happy birthday, dear." No "let's talk this through." Just a decision, made without me. I walked inside. They were sitting on the couch, watching a cooking show. No one looked up. My dad poured himself another bourbon. My mom turned up the volume. I stood there, holding my suitcase, realizing I had just been kicked out on my birthday. I never thought I could feel that hollow. But it turns out there are deeper layers to disappointment. Everything I believed was love, obligation, sacrifice, family, turned into something cold, distant, and unrecognizable. I set the suitcase down, took off my shoes, walked into the kitchen. I needed tea. My hands shook as I boiled water. Dirty dishes were still in the sink. I had washed them for the past 2 weeks. I looked at them like evidence that I had existed in this house, that I hadn't imagined, the cooking, the effort, the love. As the tea steeped, I heard my father say, "Don't make this harder than it is, Maggie. You need to learn to stand on your own." I turned around. My eyes weren't wet. Just one calm reply. "I have stood on my own. You just never noticed." No one responded. I took my tea upstairs, closed the door. My small room, once the only peaceful corner, now felt foreign. The pillow still held its morning crease. Old photos on the wall hung slightly crooked. On my desk, the cupcake sat in its box, the candle unlit. 35. Kicked out. By the people I gave everything to. I sat down, checked my phone. No messages, no birthday wishes. No one knew. No one needed to. Just me. And the truth, still warm like the steam from my tea. I wasn't loved the way I thought I was. And that's when I decided. If they wanted me to leave, I would. But not quietly. Not with some twisted sense of gratitude. I'd leave with steady feet and the self-respect I had buried for far too long. I didn't pack that night. I needed to see if it was just a bad dream. Maybe things would be normal in the morning, but deep down I knew this had been planned. Not a burst of emotion, a deliberate, calculated act. The next morning I woke early, poured coffee, watered the plants, just like every other day. They were at the table eating oatmeal and reading the paper, as if nothing had happened. "Have you thought it over?" my mother asked without looking up. I looked at her, her hair curled neatly, light lipstick on. No anger, just a fake fatigue. I answered, "Yes, I've thought, I'll go, but not in a rush." My father scoffed, "Don't drag this out. Let's have dinner together one last time, then pack up. No drama." That night, I made beef stew, their favorite. I didn't want to cook, but I wanted to watch, one last time, the people I once believed were my safe place. We ate in silence. The stew smelled rich and warm, but no one commented. I added vegetables to my mom's plate. She didn't say thank you. My father just chewed, checking his watch. Near the end of dinner, he set down his spoon. "Do you have the car keys yet? Lena said you can stay with her a few days. You should leave tonight." I looked up. "How do you know Lena agreed?" I called her. She said yes. My blood started to warm. They weren't just kicking me out. They scheduled it, booked it, handled it like I was a package being rerouted. I set down my fork calmly. If everything's arranged, then I won't cause more trouble. I stood, cleared the dishes. No one helped. No one spoke. As I washed, I remembered the time I had a 104-degree fever and still cooked dinner because Mom had a headache. I remembered when Dad said, "Why can't you act like a grown-up?" And I was only 17. I dried my hands, took the car keys, went upstairs. That night, I packed 2 cloth bags. Just what I needed, and one thing I kept like a treasure, a childhood photo, me sitting between my parents, smiling bright. A memory that may never have been real, but I took it anyway, to remind myself. I once hoped. Lena picked me up at 9. I walked out the door. My parents were still watching TV, didn't turn their heads. My mother simply said, "Keep in touch, we're still family." I didn't respond. I walked out. It was cold, the wind light, and for the first time in years, I felt completely awake. I didn't know what was ahead, but I knew. I wasn't coming back, not out of gratitude, but out of freedom. Lena lived on the ground floor of an old apartment complex, about a 10-minute drive from my parents' house. It was a small place, 2 rooms, with the scent of orange oil and strong coffee lingering in the air. She had cleaned before I came, even though I knew she usually left things messy. I knew she did it to make me feel more at ease, even if she never said it out loud. I collapsed into the armchair by the window. My bags sat beside me, like reminders. I was a guest, temporarily. Lena handed me a warm cup of tea. "Your mom is cruel," she said gently. I didn't reply. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to say anything about my parents that night. I slept in the living room. That night, the ticking wall clock echoed in my head like a reminder. I had been thrown out, rejected, disowned. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's blank stare, the tablecloth I changed last week, and the cold little note. The next morning, I got up early, not because I had to, just because I couldn't sleep. Lena had gone to her morning shift. I quietly cleaned the kitchen, made coffee, and sat alone in the silence. I opened my laptop. I didn't know why. Maybe habit. Maybe I was looking for jobs, but all I did was stare at the blank screen. I logged into my bank account. The scheduled payments were still there. Electricity, water, internet, car insurance, all in my name. How long had I been covering those? 4 years? 6? No one ever mentioned it. It was treated as normal. I was the dependent living at home, but I was the one keeping the lights on. I started canceling things one by one. First the power bill, removed my card. Then the internet, then the water. It didn't feel vindictive, just necessary. Like taking out the trash, not because you hate it, but because you can't live well with it piling up. By noon, I called the insurance company. I'd like to cancel the vehicle add-ons for 2 cars, I said. The woman on the line was polite, didn't ask questions. I hung up and looked around Lena's little apartment. The world didn't collapse. No one screamed. No one called me ungrateful. Then I checked my inbox. 3 missed messages from my mother. One of them simply said, "Internet isn't working. Can you check it for me?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not because I was angry, but because I was exhausted. That afternoon, Lena and I took a walk through a nearby park. Yellow leaves blanketed the path. Kids played. Adults read books. There was a strange calm in the air. Lena asked, "You okay?" I answered truthfully, "I don't know, but for the first time, it feels like things aren't completely out of my control." When we got back to her place, I sat down at the laptop again, opened a new document, named it Freedom, and I started to write. Not for anyone else, just for me. A statement, a reminder. I had left, and I wasn't looking back. On my 3rd morning at Lena's, I woke up at 6 a.m. even though there was no reason to. I brewed coffee, wiped down the table, even watered her balcony plants. Small habits to cling to, just to feel like I still had control over something. In the little kitchen, I opened my laptop again, this time not to check bills, but to cut the last strings that still tied me to the old house, the one I used to call home. I logged into the joint bank account I shared with my mother, the one she always called for emergencies. I used to believe her, believed that family meant trust and sharing, but now I knew trust doesn't exist without respect, and this wasn't trust, it was exploitation. I transferred all remaining funds into a brand new account under my name, changed the passwords, enabled every security alert, removed her access completely. I didn't stop there. I canceled the Amazon Prime account my father used to order endlessly on my card. I deleted the old house address from my payment info, logged out of every device. Each step didn't bring rage, just clarity, like dusting off a shelf, not because you're angry, but because you need space to breathe. That afternoon, my mother messaged me. "Did the bank card stop working? Your dad's furious." I didn't reply. I simply closed the laptop and leaned back. The ceiling in Lena's apartment had a small crack shaped like a V. I stared at it like it might explain everything I was feeling. That evening, Lena came home carrying 2 sandwiches. We ate in silence, soft music playing from her radio. After we finished, she asked, "Are you going to tell them about disconnecting everything?" I shook my head. "They'll figure it out. When the internet dies, when the lights go out, when the car isn't insured anymore, they'll know. And if they call, I won't answer." I thought that would make me feel guilty, but it didn't. I just felt calm. That night, I typed in the document named Freedom. I lived my whole life trying to please them. Now I live just to breathe. I printed that sentence, cut it out, and taped it to the bathroom mirror. A reminder, a declaration, and the beginning of something new. A message came in from an old neighbor. "Did Raj's daughter run away? He's been telling everyone around town." I wasn't surprised. My father never missed a chance to play the victim. Over the next few days, I got more texts like that. A former classmate sent me screenshots from the town's Facebook group. My dad had posted a long story saying I was ungrateful, that I'd abandoned my aging parents after they supported me until I was 35. I stared at the screen. My heart didn't break the way I thought it would. I just felt a deep, bone-deep exhaustion. I hadn't planned to say anything publicly. I didn't want to air dirty laundry. But then I read one of the comments under his post. What kind of daughter turns her back like that? Would she even be alive if not for her parents? I cried, not out of anger, but because I realized strangers were tearing me down, people who had never once asked for my side of the story. I wiped my face, opened the Freedom document, and renamed it The truth. I started gathering receipts, utility bills, water and electric payments, the roofing bill I covered last year after a storm destroyed half the house, screenshots of text messages from my mom asking me to pay their credit card because Dad was stressed, bank statements showing every quiet, unnoticed contribution I'd made. Then I wrote a post, no emotion, just facts and evidence. At the end, I wrote, "Family is where you believe you're loved, but love doesn't mean one-sided sacrifice. I don't need pity. I just need the truth not to be twisted." Then I hit post. Within 2 hours, it had been shared hundreds of times. Messages poured in from people who'd stayed silent before. One said, "I used to see you shoveling snow alone outside their house every winter." Another wrote, "Roger once bragged you paid off the house for them." I read each message, relieved and hurting at the same time. They knew, they saw, but they hadn't spoken until I finally did. My father responded with another post. "Families have misunderstandings, but you don't put them on social media." But this time, the comments below weren't on his side anymore. I didn't feel triumphant, just less alone. Truth, when spoken, has a power of its own. No yelling, no drama, just quiet, undeniable strength. That night, Lena and I had dinner in silence. She looked at me and said, "You did the hardest part already." I nodded. I didn't feel shaky anymore. I didn't need anyone to defend me now. I had the truth. And for the first time, that was enough. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My father's name, my mother's, flashing over and over. Messages flooded in. "Why would you do this to your family? Your dad's sick from the stress of what you're doing." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. Not after they painted me as the villain to everyone in town. An hour later, I got a message from my aunt, my mother's younger sister. "Maggie, don't make this worse. Family is forever. They only want what's best for you." I sighed. Maybe she meant well. Or maybe she'd never had to pay the electric bill just to keep the lights on for people who barely acknowledged her presence. I started deleting the messages I didn't need to see. Not out of anger, but because I needed room to breathe. By noon, Lena and I stopped at a gas station. When she got back in the car, she handed me a bottle of water and said quietly, "Your parents came by the library looking for you. They said they're going to sue you." I froze. Sue me for what? Financial abuse. Emotional damage. They say you use their money without permission. I laughed, an empty, hollow laugh. I paid every single bill. They knew where every dollar went. That night, I received a letter from their lawyer. It was official. They were threatening legal action if I didn't publicly apologize and reimburse them for misuse of shared funds. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I opened the folder where I had kept all my proof. I carefully arranged every bill, every screenshot, every email. The next morning, I went to the community legal center. A young lawyer named Harper met with me. I told her everything and handed her a thick folder of evidence. She reviewed it, then looked me in the eye and said firmly, "You've done nothing wrong. If they continue, we'll represent you. And if necessary, you have grounds to countersue." For the first time in weeks, I saw a light break through the clouds. I wasn't alone anymore. On the way home, I stopped by a small bakery near the market, bought myself an apple tart, my favorite. That evening, Lena and I shared it quietly. No big words, just the scent of cinnamon, the soft flicker of candlelight, and a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. I had been pushed out of the place I once called home, but I was building something of my own now, built on truth, on courage, and on the belief that I deserve a life with no strings attached. A week later, I moved out of Lena's apartment. Not because of tension, because I had found a small place of my own, a tiny one-bedroom unit, old but bright, just a few blocks from the library where I worked. I carried every box up to the 3rd floor by myself. No one helped, but each step on the stairs felt like a quiet declaration. I was entering a new chapter. No guides, no gatekeepers. I arranged my secondhand furniture, a thrift store armchair, a chipped wooden table, a few printed art posters taped to the walls. None of it matched, but it all felt like mine. That first night, I sat in the kitchen, eating instant noodles and watching the streetlights glow through the window. No TV, no music, just silence. And I realized I wasn't lonely. A few days later, someone slipped a note under my door. "I read your post. Thank you for speaking up for those who can't. No name, no number, just a simple sentence that brought me to tears. Then little things started happening. I planted a pot of mint on the windowsill, signed up for Sunday morning yoga, baked cookies for the neighbor downstairs. Nothing big, but each small act stitched back together the parts of me that had been worn thin. I stopped waiting for my parents to call, stopped checking emails hoping for an apology, stopped expecting anything from people who once called themselves family. All I hoped for now was to never lose faith in myself again. One quiet afternoon, I stopped by the stationery store and bought a thick journal. On the first page, I wrote, "Family isn't where you're born, it's where you're free to be yourself, without conditions, without trade." I closed the journal and placed it on the shelf. Outside, the wind was strong. Leaves spun wildly through the early autumn sky. I sat by the window, holding a cup of hot tea, and smiled. I hadn't crumbled. I hadn't turned to stone. I had simply stood up and walked away. Alone, but never empty. I was whole, even on my own. We've just witnessed the journey of a woman abandoned by her own family on her birthday. But instead of breaking down, she chose to rise, to speak her truth, and to live a life of wholeness even on her own. This story reminds us, blood doesn't always mean love. But when we find the courage to let go of what no longer serves us, we also open the door to a new life, lighter, calmer, and truly worth living.